In the last video, we installed Ganache CLI, Web3, and Mocha as well. Before we move on, I want to give you a little quick tip about the Web3 library. Now, this is probably one of the more important videos in the course, at least as far as things go from saving you time. So the real goal of this course this video right now is to save you time as you start doing your own research around building Ethereum projects in the future. So this is just a little tip, something that I hope is going to save you some pain. So here's what's up. I want you to be aware of versioning issues around Web3. So this is the thing that's going to save you some time, just being aware of this issue. In the Ethereum world right now, Web3 is used as the absolute end-all solution for communicating between a JavaScript app and the Ethereum network. Remember, several times we've said that Web3 is kind of like our portal into the Ethereum world. It's how we get programmatic access to an Ethereum network. Now, the issue here is that there are two groups of versions of Web3 out in the wild right now. There's version 0.something. The most common version you'll see is 0.21 something. And then on the other side, more recently, version 1 has been released. Now, you and I just installed version 1, so we are working with the newer version of Web3. What I want you to be aware of is that at this point in time, the vast majority of documentation, the vast majority of Stack Overflow posts, the vast majority of blog posts out in the wild talking about Ethereum are all using the older version of Web3. This is kind of a big deal because the API, or the way that we work with both these libraries, is significantly different, significantly. In particular, the earlier version of Web3 had a little bit more primitive interface for working with the library. It had support only for callback functions for whenever we wanted to work with asynchronous calls. And unfortunately with Web3, just about everything we do is asynchronous in nature. So if you want to, say, get access to a contract, or call a function on a contract, or send money from one person to another, these are all asynchronous actions that we execute using Web3. And the only way to get some indication that our function call or our transfer of money or getting access to our contract has been completed successfully is by providing a callback function. In general, we do not like callback functions as developers. They are generally hard to keep organized in our code, and it's really easy to write some ugly looking spaghetti code that is difficult to understand when we're working with callbacks. So this earlier version of Web3 did not have support for promises or anything that could kind of easily make our code look nicer. This problem has been solved with version 1. So version 1 of Web3 does have support for promises and the much newer async await syntax. So with version 1, you and I get to write some very nice, pretty looking code, which is great. That's what we want to do. And that's why we're using the newer version of Web3. So again, as you start to do your own research, I just want you to be aware that you will see blog posts. You will see Stack Overflow posts and all these types of things that make use of this earlier version of Web3. But I really encourage you to get familiar with version 1 because, of course, we want to learn the newest version of these libraries. Okay, so that's just a real quick note on Web3. Just be aware that this is a problem, and sometimes you'll look at these documentation resources that use some older code, and we don't really like using that older version. There are, of course, other differences between these two libraries, just beyond the fact that one has callbacks and the other has promises, but those are more the differences in how we call certain functions, and I bet you could guess that, yeah, hey, they're different, whatever. But the big difference I want you to be aware of is that this does not have support for callbacks, or this does not have support for promises over here. Okay, so now that you understand the difference and why we care about the new version, let's continue on, and we're going to start talking about what Web3 really does for us internally. So, quick break, and I'll see you in a minute.